just stuck with it. And eventually, I got it. It's been a big part of my life. And without it, I would not have seen a lot of things that I have or been introduced to others. And it's one of those things where if you get involved, it makes your life better. And I think I'm a better person for having been involved in tennis than otherwise.
That's Carl Prime, who ended our last episode talking about excellence. Today, we're going to follow the thread to explore excellence in sports within the Little Bahamas community of Coconut Grove. And they were excellent. With a disproportionate number of champions coming from a relatively small area, it begins to make sense when you start to hear the background. Here's Charlie Coney, who played football and basketball and co-founded the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame.
It was just a fun time. And when we played against Northwestern and Booker T, those were our arch rivals, and it was a great time to be a George Washington Carver Hornet. Because now the things that the George Washington Carver talked about, we all feel it now. Because his motto was, start where you are with what you have. Make something of it and never be satisfied.
George Washington Carver, a Black-only school in the heart of the Little Bahamas community, was the first public school for Blacks in Miami-Dade County. Many teachers at Carver lived in the Grove. Most students lived in the Grove. Carver was the epicenter, and the motto made its way into the heart of the community in a lasting way. Students came from the South before integration because there was not another Black school.
Every day, especially as a grade school child coming up, I got a chance to stand at the fence and watch football practice. So it was an immense thing under the direction of Traz Powell to see this happen.
That's a name you'll hear lots in this episode, Traz Powell.
Traz Powell.
Traz Powell. Traz Powell.
Traz Powell.
His given name was Nathaniel Eugene Powell. He was born in Overtown, another largely Black community in Miami, and was an excellent athlete in both high school and college. He and his Florida A&M teammates were the first Black athletes to play in the Orange Bowl Stadium in 1947, where he scored the only touchdown, which made him the first Black person to score at the Orange Bowl. This 1947 game, which became an annual game called the Orange Blossom Classic, was the first time ever Blacks could play on the field at the Orange Bowl Stadium. And it was the only game where Blacks were allowed entry to the stadium at all. It wasn't until the following year that Blacks could watch any game from the stands. So this game with Traz Powell was a history maker in a lot of ways. After college, he returned to Miami to coach at George Washington Carver High School from 1948 to 1965 when the school system integrated and Carver was dropped back to a middle school. While at Carver, Powell led the school's football team to 9 state championships, 5 of which were during undefeated seasons. In 1966, he moved to Mays Senior High, where he led the team to a state title that year. And in 1968, Powell once again made history in the Orange Bowl, where he led Mays High to a 14-7 upset over Miami High. It was the first time Miami High had played an all-Black school. Traz Powell coached high school football for 21 years and never once had a losing season. He then coached track at Miami-Dade Community College, where there's a stadium named for him. It serves as the home field for several of Miami's high school football teams.
Let's see, a psychologist, he used to psych you out. he was a very instrumental man in sports, you know. He was very demanding. He actually wanted perfection out of you, you know, one way or the other, you know. And he was a good instructor, you know. He advised my baby brother, which is Craig, to go to Gables, because that's when Carver had phased out. And the rest of the team went down to Mays, you know. But he advised my brother to go to Gables, and that's how he became the first black quarterback at Carl Gables Senior High. You know, he was very instrumental in directing him that way.
That was Richard Curry. He married his high school sweetheart, also a Carver alumni, and has spent most of his life in Coconut Grove, but for the time he was in college and in the service. Richard ran track and played football, and when I mentioned Traz Powell, he jumped in straight away. Everyone knew Traz, and his coaching prowess is undeniable, but when folks are sharing their memories of his greatness, they fold in his humanity, the impact he had on their lives, not just their sports. Here's another Carver High School sportsman, Levi Kelly.
Those are rewarding times. I can tell you that coming to Carver as a young freshman, I was very shy. Didn't talk to many people. I actually had my little group of friends that were all from South Miami. We didn't venture out too much among that group until you start to mature and grow. Next year, I became involved in football and sports programs. And I think that's where I started maturing and becoming more my self-awareness and becoming a man. And I can credit that to one of the people that I still will praise until the day I die, and that's Traz Powell. He was a man among men, as far as I'm concerned. And he is the one guy that really stood out to me as being a person that was very honest and very focused, and he wouldn't let you quit. I can tell you this still. I'll never forget one time, because of the struggles we were having in my household, was trying to help. I had 3 sisters and me and my brother, just trying to sustain some type of family unity. So I decided one day I was going to quit school. My now, who God bless her soul, passed away, Dorothy Bowman, found out about this. She passed it on to Traz Powell. And when I got home that afternoon, I'll never forget, my dad, who was a little guy in stature and everything, and he worked very hard. But his wife passing away took its toll on him. So he, on the weekends, really hit the ball pretty hard. But when I got home that day, I saw this black Pontiac pulled up in the yard. And I said, that looked like Coach's car. So when I got there, he had been talking to my dad and told my dad, your son, I understand, want to quit school. And he said, Coach, you do whatever you got to do with him. And he told me that right there that day, he said, you'll be there at 6 o'clock in the morning on the field. And I'll never forget, he made me run 30 laps around the field. He said that you won't quit on me ever again. And that stuck with me to this day. That sticks with me. And so it really made a man out of me. So anybody mention Traz Powell, my antennas go up, because I know that what he did for me.
Levi went on to a career spanning more than 30 years with the National Park Service. I asked him if he was ever able to talk to Traz Powell about that moment he stopped Levi from quitting school. Here's what he said.
Matter of fact, I had the opportunity. I worked in Washington, D.C., and fortunate enough, I was able to get in some positions that I were able to be able to reciprocate some of the things, as far as I'm concerned, that they gave to me. And one of the things I did was set up a special congressional tour for them when they came up, and fraternity came up to Washington. They have the annual. So I set up a tour for him and all the teachers who from the Carver. Gave them they had a special VIP tour. They had a escort. I had a park ranger escorting them. They didn't have to wait in line at the Washington monuments and all this stuff and so forth. That was really a proud moment. I know when I walked up to the convention hall and I could hear that booming voice, And at the time, he was walking with a cane, and I didn't know that, you know. So when I walked in, and I walked up to him, and of course, I was dressed pretty decent, and he looked at me, and he just grabbed me and hugged me. And I said, wow. I said, wow. And he said, listen, he said, I got to go up on the program, but don't you go anywhere. And we came back, we talked for about 3 hours. Yeah. Reminiscing? Just reminiscing. Yeah, we went down memory lane. Yeah.
It's important to note here that these accomplishments, sports and academic alike, were made against the odds. Carver was, at that time, one of the few schools Black students could attend. That meant many Black students had to take a bus, sometimes from more than 30 miles away. Today, that isn't unheard of, but at the time, students were expected to and did walk to school because schools were close enough to be able to walk, for white students anyway. Transportation was even more of a challenge for Black students who were engaged in after-school activities. Football players, cheerleading, other sports, folks in theater and band, really anything that relied on students staying after school, those students missed the bus home. And it was the teachers and the coaches who picked up the slack.
In terms of the football team, Trask, anytime, especially when you got winning teams, everybody's all there for it and involved and so forth. But a lot of times Trask Powell took them home, picked them up, especially during football season, to make sure, he had his players.
That's Carol, one of the anchor partners on the project team. She's been with us since the very beginning. She was a majorette and in speech and drama at Carver. She was also valedictorian there before becoming the first Black to get a master's in mathematics at the University of Miami.
We may have had people rehearsing that lived in Richmond Heights or South Miami, and the last bus, the school bus, left at 3-something from Carver. So the football team and all these other people had to thumb back.
For those of you unfamiliar, thumb back means hitch a ride, and Carol isn't the only one who recalled that.
I don't know when the last city bus left because it didn't go regular, but the drama teacher actually took all them home. Took them to Richmond Heights, took them to South Miami after practice.
And here's Iryl Porter, Carol's older sister, who started marching with the high school band in 2nd grade as a majorette and ultimately won several state Black twirling competitions. She trained with Don Allen from the University of Miami. After getting degrees in chemistry, business, and guidance counseling, Iryl went to Kansas City and established academic pipelines for minority doctors beginning in high school through college and medical school, including opportunities for employment after they'd graduated.
My teachers prepared me for that. They prepared me to be able to speak, to lead, and certainly to follow. We were told in the beginning, school is your lifeline, and you take advantage of it. Teachers would bring you home. They would make sure that you were where you needed to be. I can remember my first year in Kansas City teaching, and we didn't have that type of support.
The support and camaraderie found at school and in sports, it helped many of these folks get prepared for successful lives outside of sports. Walter Cambridge.
My name is Edwin Walter Cambridge. I was born here in Miami, Coconut Grove. My parents came in from Little Bahamas, late 1800s.
Said that sports was, for a lot of people, a way to better themselves. He came from a family of sportsmen. Richard Curry, who earlier told us about how Trask Powell advised his brother to go to Coral Gables Senior instead of Mays Senior, where he became the first Black quarterback, He and Walter Cambridge are cousins. And 5 of Walter's siblings went to college on a sports scholarship. He went to Wiley on a track scholarship, though he also played football and tennis and played in the band.
Well, we were lucky we had scholarships, and 6 of us got college degrees, all in sports.
I asked Walter if he had a preference for football, track, or tennis. Here's what he said.
Track was easier.
His son, Edwin Neal Cambridge, went on to play pro football for the Dallas Cowboys and looks at his dad with great pride during the interview. Neal, as he goes by, acknowledges the role of sports historically, but he also talks about it like paving the way for the future, that we follow in the footsteps of people we want to emulate. And this idea of showcasing history to inspire the future, that's also how the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame comes to be. Here's Anthony Witherspoon, a college basketball coach and co-founder of the Hall of Fame.
The Sports Hall of Fame was created to showcase and preserve the heritage of the athletic accomplishments of student athletes who lived in this little small community at the time. It was known as Coconut Grove. Obviously, it has kind of transcended itself over the years to West Grove / Little Bahamas. The goal was to preserve the rich heritage and accomplishments of not only student athletes, but community leaders who contributed to the student athlete success, and also to the coaches who contributed to the student athlete success. I didn't know I was doing that until I was able to look back and say, wow, as I grew, first thing I wanted to do was mentor young men, and I did that through the development of Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame. And that's exactly the way I saw it, that we needed to now pass this down to our younger people. Our goal is to hopefully build a center where we can attract kids to do year-round service program initiatives, and at the same time, show them the Hall of Fame Museum and the accomplishments of athletes that probably their ancestors, cousins, brothers, uncles, and then from there began to try to rebuild some of what was in the 50s and the 60s as far as coaches being strong mentors and providing a straight success path for kids that can hopefully lead to college scholarship, college participation in sports, and more importantly, a more netted community in lieu of all this gentrification. That's our long-term goal, and it's going to take a lot of resources and a lot of trying to bring people back in our community to achieve that goal.
When I was a kid, I could run out on Grand Avenue Park and I could shoot hoops, I can play a little basketball. Well, today you can't do that. In fact, they don't even have a basketball court out there. And in the Grove, I believe there's only one place that has basketball, and that's out at Vera Park. So our kids that live in this community have no place to go. Many of the guys want to play football have to go further down, Sunland, someplace else down there, and that should not be. When you go to the park, you find other outside communities that are occupying the park, and kids cannot do that. So we need the support of our commissioners and everybody else that can help out to help us do something with this issue, this problem that we have here in our community. We just want to be happy. We just want to know we've got kids that want to carry on the tradition of George Washington Carver. They want to be a Hornet too. They want to be winners. They want to be champions. They want to follow our footsteps. Please allow them to do it. Because they can.
And those kids Charlie mentioned, they've got a huge group of role models right there in their neighborhood. Levi Kelly played 3 different sports at Carver. He went on to work with the National Park Service for 35 years, during which time he became the first Black manager of the National Mall, managing teams of people in Washington, D.C., before returning to Miami to, in his words, give back. Iryl Porter, we've heard, helped minority doctors find not only employment, but tenure, which allowed them to build security for the future. Her sister Carol developed software to process satellite data for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, before moving on to Howard University, where she was the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs at the School of Business. Walter Cambridge is a Korean War veteran who then served in the Peace Corps while working at the Parks and Recreation Department in Miami. When Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, Cambridge was working at one of the few parks for blacks. Then, in 1980, race riots in Miami prompted the government to invest money in black communities, and Cambridge led teams that opened and ran some of those parks where kids, naturally, came to play sports. Charlie Coney graduated from Florida A&M University and attended the Gemological Institute of America. He went on to become a certified gemologist and diamantologist. He's working alongside Anthony Witherspoon to make the Sports Hall of Fame a community hub where the next generations can learn to lead with pride. Carl Prime taught in the school system and then went into photography and brings all of those skills to several committees to preserve the heritage of the community. In addition to all of that, he's compiling everything he learned and putting it into a book. Richard Curry played football and ran track, and his youngest son, Rafiq Curry, went to the Beijing Olympics for the triple jump. After enlisting and being posted in Germany, Richard Curry came home and ultimately retired from the United States Postal Service. While he was doing that, he started a local track club for youth, and it's taken those kids all over the United States, which is exactly where Carl started us off in this episode. Sports provides an opportunity for life experiences, and that helps build character. The students at Carver excelled not in just football. They were track and field champions, baseball and basketball champions too. But they excelled off the field as well, making these strides and more with secondhand equipment, uniforms, and textbooks, but with a cadre of dedicated community members to help push them and inspire them, and teachers who would take them home when the bus didn't run. These folks, and many more we're hearing from this season, are carrying the torch of Coach Traz Powell. The motto of George Washington Carver Senior High School, where Traz first started his illustrious coaching career, was, "Start where you are with what you have, make something of it, and never be satisfied." Traz and the teachers and parents in this community drilled that motto into students' heads. And those students who are now adults, they're taking that motto, that drive, and that determination into the future. The rich and forgotten history of Black Coconut Grove was created by
Fiona Louise Cooper Baker,
Carol Davis Henley,
Carl Leon Prime,
and I'm your host, Rebecca Peterson, Senior Manager for Community Programs at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens.